Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a Besties episode of The Gold Standard with Alan Mosley. And here's your host, Alan Mosley.
That's probably the most energetic you've been in some time. I really like that.
Hey, look, we got this new amazing setup. Isn't this cool? We're
Yeah.
like all on like our own cameras and
I like that.
It's
Look
sweet,
at you.
isn't it?
No, go back. So
okay. Check
this
it out.
people at home don't realize now
Yeah.
when it goes to you, I can see you.
Yeah, you can see me, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Like
I
this
can see
is
you.
starting to feel legit,
Look at
man.
that. I know.
It's really
look at
cool.
that. So, guys, welcome back to another episode of The Gold Standard. I am your host, Alan Mosley. You can follow us on social media. That is facebook.com/TGS Alan Mosley. Twitter is at Alan and Mosley, but you don't have to do any of that. You could just go to our website, which is thegoldstandardpodcast.com. Consider supporting the show by joining our Patreon, which is patreon.com/TGS Alan Mosley.
Look at that.
I
That's
know,
so
look at that.
cool.
And you know what's cool,
Works.
too, is I can see the stuff when you're
Yeah.
doing the stuff.
Awesome. So when I make a mistake, you can catch me and call me out on it.
Yeah. Well, but I'm looking at the camera, so I'm not really like, okay, I'll just go ahead and admit I don't actually look at you. So,
That's okay. I don't look at me either.
okay, well, there you go. So, for people who are watching the video portion of the show, and frankly, I don't know how you can enjoy the Gold Standard without looking at our pretty faces, you might notice that the studio looks a little bit different. We've moved into a new studio space, so the audio and video quality is ever going upward here
Epic.
at the Gold Standard.
Yes.
That's thanks to beautiful Osborne Studio and Sound,
We try.
by the way.
I try.
Yeah, I know. You said we first. You changed it to I. I like how you did that. I can see you still. Remember that. I can see you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
You're
there he
like
is.
over there.
Yeah.
We got to get like a paper plane or
I
something
know.
to
If
throw
I had,
at each other.
I was looking for something
That's
to
weird.
throw, and all I found was my phone.
Don't throw
and
your phone.
Yeah.
That would be terrible.
Yeah. So anyway, you know what? And we also have the cool little monitor, so I can
check
actually
that
pull
out.
up. I know. I can pull up what we're looking at today. So it's time for the meme of the week.
Yay!
What was the last time we did a meme of the week?
It's been a few weeks.
It's been a few weeks, hasn't
Yes, it has.
It's our meme of the week. Empty cop cars are just scarecrows for people. Ain't that the dang truth? Notice, by the way, that I said dang.
Yeah.
We have a few
Are you behaving
announcements to
yourself
make.
now?
We
Okay.
have a few announcements
Go
to
ahead.
make here on the program.
Go ahead.
So first of all, we're going to be a kinder, gentler Gold Standard with Alan Mosley.
Oh, that's
So
cute.
we're going to be watching our language. Yeah, I know.
Good.
You sounded so disappointed. You sounded so
I
disappointed.
wasn't disappointed.
You know what? I don't like how chirpy you've been today.
I'm sorry. I don't know. I feel I don't know. I feel
You
excited
seem-
about our new setup. I
You,
guess. I don't know.
well, you seem excited, but just we got a long show ahead of us.
Settle down. Right?
Yeah, don't, because I feel like you're gonna flame out.
I'm not gonna flame out.
Okay,
doesn't
that
happen
is
to me.
true. If there's one thing I know about Blake Osborne, it's that you've got energy for days. By the way, our meme of the week comes from the other 3%. You can find them on Facebook, which is at the other number 3%. The other 3%. They are a really awesome page. Which, by the way, if you check them out, look at their top pinned post.
Sweet.
It's our last episode.
Yes,
Principal
sir.
stands are wasted in Washington. You know what? I tell you what, any Facebook page that is willing to pin one of our episodes
Yeah.
to the top of their page is really dumb, quite frankly, but
No.
is somebody
say
that we
that.
support. So they're good friends of ours. We support everybody at the other 3%. Also, by the way, I forgot to mention in the last couple of weeks, there's the statusquo.net is the website where you can find Nick and Matt, their podcast, which is the Status Quo. So their most recent little entry here is on domestic violence of cops.
Wow.
Our guest today, by the way, loves this topic, even though that's not what we're talking about today. So that gives you a little hint as to who's coming on a little bit later.
Oh, I just wanted to say this. Going back to the first meme.
Okay.
Back in the day when I used to tour with my band, we did shows.
God.
Yeah, this is a long time ago. mind
Go
you.
on.
We used to do shows in North Carolina and South Carolina, and there's this really crazy trick in North Carolina that we noticed that they used to do, or was it South? I can't remember, but they would literally park a cop car under a bridge. Just sitting it there, nobody in it, on the interstate, and everybody would be driving the speed limit thinking, oh God, there's a cop there, I don't want to speed. And it would get to the point where it's like, why don't they just put a dummy in it? You know, I mean, if you're going to do that, at least make it believable. Wait, did I say that?
Just put a dummy in it. That just so a
sorry.
regular cop.
That wasn't
That's what
very
you're
nice
saying.
of me.
So we can't say the bad word, but we can say ACAB.
I literally meant just a mannequin, you know.
Okay,
but
you're just a mannequin.
That was a pun unintended.
Remember what I said earlier about you being chirpy?
Yes.
That's okay. I'm just saying. So anyway, for everybody at home, just be mindful of the next few weeks. We're going to be adding all sorts of cool little graphics and features to the show. And by the way, we're considering going to more than once a week. By we, of course, I mean me, because there's no way in heck that Blake is going to be here more than once a week. And really, could any of us handle any more of Blake than once a week?
Be nice.
Be nice. Don't say that to me. You know what? I think it's time for a commercial break. What do you think?
Fine, sure.
You know what? Let's do that.
All right, here we go.
We will be back after this break with our guest today. Hey, did you see the playoff games last weekend?
Oh, you're into the sports ball game.
Sports Ball with Mike Meharry and Alan Mosley. SportsBallPodcast.com.
Sports ball is not a libertarian sports show. It's a sports show done by a couple of libertarians.
For when you need your bread and circuses. Your ad could be playing right now, reaching thousands of potential customers. Sadly, it's not, but it could be. Find out how to be an advertised sponsor for The Gold Standard with Alan Mosley. Email us at tgsalanmosley@gmail.com.
All right.
You know what's awesome about the new setup as well? Is now when we come back from commercial, I can see that we're back from
Isn't
commercial.
that great? That's
As
the greatest
opposed
thing in the
for me
world.
to just go, duh, and look at you and wait for you to go,
are we
you're
back?"
back, idiot. And then I go, thanks, jerk. So anyway, notice, by the way, I'm finding all these other words to say other than bad words.
It's kind of like church cussing.
I'm working on it. This is a work. If there is a slip up, then I know that our producer will go back in and edit it out.
No, I won't. It's too much work.
There's one thing Alan Mosley is concerned about. It's language in church.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly so. So, unfortunately, since we don't have all the cameras set up yet, we just have this one static image, our guest is actually already on the screen before I introduce her. Our guest today is the host of the Sherry Voluntary show, as well as co-host of Postcards from Somalia, which you can find at Postcards from Somalia on Facebook. They air their episodes every Monday night at, it is 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern?
That's correct, Alan.
It's sad that I have to ask you because
'cause
I
never-
also co-host that program.
That's right.
Sherry Voluntary, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me back.
And not only, but you're actually physically here
Right.
in the studio.
You're blessed.
So what's wrong with you then?
You want a list?
Yeah.
I could make a list.
So why are you out west?
Well, I spoke in Memphis on Monday night at Campaign for Liberty Memphis. And so I just cut my way back through here to visit my friend.
So for people that are not aware of their Tennessee geography, Memphis, of course, is in the far west bottom left corner of Tennessee. And then she traveled east to Middle Tennessee, which is where Osborne Studio Sounds are, in Columbia, Tennessee. We're south of Nashville.
Yeah.
But your home base is in Knoxville, which is in East Tennessee at the foothills of the Smokies, which that's the statist side of the state. I would get that right, I think.
No, I don't think so. Okay, so you got all the bubbas in my portion of the state, and all the, I don't know what you call them, Democrats are over in the, so we're full of statism. But Tennessee got the full Sherry Voluntary experience. All three portions of Tennessee this 4 days.
This is true. I'll tell you what we don't want to have the full portion of. And that's our
As he looks at me.
and that's our topic for today.
Oh.
Now this article comes from Reason magazine, and
Full Monty.
And no woman should be forced to give a troll a Brazilian bikini wax. Now, I just want to say that was the headline of the article. So I'm not calling this man who calls himself Jessica a troll. That's what the author of the article did. Transgender activist Jessica Yaniv.
Yeah, whatever.
I'd say Yaniv, but
Yaniv.
you know.
You're naive.
Sounds a bit Jewy, I'd say.
It does
Wouldn't
sound
you?
like the Grand
that
Jewish
kind of gum?
conspiracy.
Has transgender activist Jessica Yaniv has forced the British Columbia Human Rights Council. That exists. There is a British Columbia Human Rights Council.
That is the same Human Rights Council, by the way, that called Jordan Peterson up on
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes.
Well,
I understand a little bit about Canada.
So British Columbia Human Rights Council to hear a truly absurd complaint. Now, what that complaint is, and I'm going to go ahead and close the laptop for today, is she went to a number of different parlors to get a Brazilian wax. And, of course, these parlors only service women. It's female workers, and they only give Brazilian waxes to women.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, so at this point in the story, nothing even seems remotely at odds. The problem is that Jessica does not have a female anatomy.
No, you don't
Because
say.
Jessica is a man.
Okay.
You're not willing to say that?
This person sounds like a troll, not a person who's a transgendered person.
Well, he wears a dress, and he does indeed have a penis.
I mean, I would say that any man who wants someone to pour hot wax on their scrotum and then rip it off isn't in their right mind, okay? I mean,
that doesn't sound very
I'm
appealing.
sure you are well aware that skin is very delicate.
I have to kind of shift in my chair a little bit.
Can you imagine, ripping that off? Like, what if the skin comes with it, y'all? Which is quite possible.
I'm like sweating in here, man. That's a horrible
I brought
idea.
the full Sherry Voluntary experience to
I
the
can
gold
see that.
standard.
Okay, so that's not exactly what we're discussing today.
I'm just saying, that's stupid, just on at face value without all the other stuff.
Yeah, that's not actually what we're discussing today. And you know what else? This is actually really bothering me. Blake, how do I change this?
You don't. Open your laptop back up.
I don't want to open my laptop back up. Where's the little button at?
It's like right under there, under the bottom where your hand
You're
is.
like having
you
a
gotta
relationship
you gotta
with your
push
TV.
it.
I'm caressing
It's weird. It's like a little game controller type thing.
Oh, it's on the bottom.
Oh yeah, it's on the bottom. There you go. There you are.
I just wanted to turn it off. That's all I wanted to do.
That's
Hey,
what
look,
happens
there's gonna
when
be
you
kinks,
caress
right?
things, Alan. You turn them off.
So anyway, first of all, Jessica Yaniv, I'm positive that's not the name he was born with, because Jessica Yaniv is a man.
Yeah.
She's not a woman. That is a he. It is a man. If you have a penis and testicles, you are a man. Mm-hmm. So this man entered a female-only beauty parlor to get a Brazilian wax of his male genitalia. And, of course, what did the women say? They said no.
Of course
Which,
They said no, thank you,
well,
because they're Canadian. They're very polite.
I'm sure they did. But seriously though, let's keep a straight face for a second. Take the transgender activism out of it completely. Mm-hmm. If I walked into that place before I even made a request, they would say, "Well, this is
right.
for females.
You're in the wrong place,
You're in the wrong. This is for females."
Sorry, next door.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that's how they would say it. I wonder if all of the parlors there are run by Asian ladies. Like here.
That could be, but those are generally the massage
then would
the
they
nail salons.
Would they then say, do you think that they've assimilated to Canadian culture?
That's quite possible.
We need to ask Mike of Mike and Friends
yes.
about how people assimilate to Canadian culture.
Yeah.
So anyway, getting back on track. So he's turned down, and apparently he goes to a few different institutions. They all say, of course, no, because for one, he's a man, and they don't perform that service on a man. And two, on a more principled level, it's they have a right to deny the service that's inherent in their natural rights. If I'm the worker or if I own the establishment, you can't force me to work for you. That is literally slavery. That's not figuratively slavery. That's literally slavery.
Not according to Gary Johnson.
Yeah, well.
He said bake the cake. Now we can say wax the Johnson.
Are we really going to make this another LP bashing episode? Is that what you really want to do?
I'm just saying. For me, it's symbolic of the equality of outcomes mindset, which is also more commonly on the right, the zero tolerance mindset, where you will do what we want, and if you don't, we will make a legislative force that you will force you to do it legislatively. And then when that creates more problems, we'll go the legislative route again and make more legislation that then creates more problems. So it's the same sort of stupid cycle of how about we just let individuals be in control of who they service in their business. What this brought up in my mind was, say, in Nevada, where prostitution is legal, do prostitutes have to service clients that they don't want to? Is that, now we're talking about consent of sex, are we actually going to, because it's a service and it's sold in Nevada legally, are we going to then say women or men have no right to consent to sex if they sell it because they, or do all women, because look, sex is a need, right? I mean, it's a human need. So now do we all have to give it up to the incels that, because, you know.
This is where a lot of your activist types miss the forest from the trees, because what they would say is that this is exactly why we want prostitution to be illegal, so that we don't have to deal with these types of questions. But why don't they want to deal with this type of question? The reason why they don't want to have to deal with this type of question is because it brings up those uncomfortable subjects of, do people own themselves? Do they own their own labor? Do they own the fruits of their labor?
It gets to the core of the issue.
Because if they have to admit that, well, you can't be forced to perform a service because you own yourself and that would be immoral, then so many other dominoes then fall. Of course, that's perfectly fine for us. That's perfectly in line with natural rights. But the state as it exists does not recognize natural rights as we see them. So it's much easier for them to pick and choose based on the particular issue or service than it is for them to apply, dare I say it, principles to the matter.
Right. And it's much easier to get what you want, and to, they're really trying to socially mold everyone into their own image. And so if you can do that with the proxy force of the state, then you don't have to convince people, because if your ideas are good enough, you don't have to force people. You can convince them. But the problem is that this, of course, we want people who are different to be able to live in the world and not be harassed and harmed. That's, the good intention is okay, but the way they go about it, and I think Thomas Sowell said something to that effect, of that you can't just measure something on its good intentions. How it's carried out is more important than the intention. So I think that's probably what is going on here, and their whole philosophy falls.
And so where the activism part of it comes in is, and you had already mentioned the Bank the Cake fiasco, and where these situations are similar is the person out in, what was that, Colorado? That was where the baker was?
Yes.
So I think it's fair to say they didn't go out of their way to find a bakery that would accommodate them. They did the opposite. They went out of their way to find a bakery that would not accommodate them. And then as soon as they found one, they leached onto that for activism purposes, and then flung that into the realm of the state and its courts, as opposed to just dealing with it rationally, freely between individuals. And I feel like that's part of the aspect of this Jessica Yaniv story as well, which is, I don't know if there's a parlor around there that is servicing gentlemen of his persuasion, but I in a free market, if there is a demand for that, there probably would be one. But I'm willing to bet that Jessica, he did not go out of his way to find that establishment. He probably went out of his way to purposely find establishments that were very vocal about servicing females and female needs only, so that he could then interject his politics into their business. And then when he got the answer that we know he was going to get, if that was my establishment, we would all say the exact same answer. I would tell my employees, if you're not comfortable doing this, you don't have to do it. That's what any logical thinking person would do. That's what we would all expect would be the outcome. He went looking for that outcome so that he could then interdict his politics and force all of that into the state and its courts.
It's a real tactic of progressives, and it's been a long time. I mean, you look at what's the guy that wrote that book?
the guy that wrote that book.
Rules for Radicals by I forget his name right now, but that's a tactic, because it's finding a way to make an issue out of something that is such a minority. I mean, you think about what the minority size of transgendered people in this country is, and it's a non-issue when it comes to things like this, really. And the other thing is that, and I think the article mentioned this, is that, you know, real trans people who just want to live their lives and be left alone, and real gay people who really just want to live their lives and be left alone, this is the kind of thing, this sort of crazy activism that makes the issues worse, because you're actually feeding into the fears of the radical, you know, conservatives or whatever, that don't want anyone to be able to be different at all. And so you're actually giving them more to go on and creating more division rather than actually solving a problem. They're not about solving this problem.
And so you also get into the hierarchy question of, okay, well, whose rights trump whose? And first of all, before we even go into that, I would argue that you only have this issue when you're dealing with every single individual topic one at a time, as opposed to applying a principled approach. If we understood natural rights and we applied the principle that people own themselves and own their bodies and own their labors and cannot be forced to accommodate someone else, if we believe that, then all of this goes away. I mean, there is no problem. That is the final decision. We move on. But since they are choosing not to do that, then we have to decide, well, whose rights trumps whose? Does Jessica Yaniv's rights trump all, that, well, she identifies as a woman and she can't be discriminated against based on sex, gender, orientation? So does that right trump all? Or does the right of the woman who works at the parlor, who says, well, I don't actually want to touch his cock and balls, therefore...
Technical terms.
Yeah, that's science. I mean, look it up, read a book. So, a book written by a guy.
Right, a book written by, or a lady.
So is she then, her right to not have to perform that service, and in particular, this case, not wanting to touch the genitalia of the opposite sex, because, newsflash, for the people at home, the reason why this is so controversial is because the woman working at the establishment and Jessica Yaniv are different genders, different sexes. Now, Jessica may not think that, but I don't really care what a mentally ill person thinks. I care what is true and real, and what's true and real is that they are two biologically different entities, and one does not want to touch the other. And so...
And just on the basis of biology, and knowing what we know about the state, if she were to do that, they would probably raid her for being a business of prostitution. Like, that's the kind of crap they do. So...
Yeah, well, yeah, if they want to get you, they'll figure out a way. They'll figure out a way to get you. And so, kind of tying this all back in, because you had brought up the prostitution angle in Nevada and that sort of thing, is that the reason why, I think another thing that really hits home to people is you have all these different movements. You don't have a liberty movement, that doesn't exist. But you do have a feminist movement, you have a progressive movement, you have transgender activists such as Jessica Yaniv. And sometimes they overlap, but sometimes they come to heads with one another.
Yes.
And this one really comes to heads because someone who is trying to be all-inclusive, the LGBTQT blah, 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 plus, 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 the person who's trying to accommodate everyone equally has to then come to terms with, well, what do I value more?
Right.
Do I value the woman's right to not be subjected to this contact? Or do I value this man's right to call himself a woman and be serviced as such? Yeah,
that's where you get the TERFs, the trans excluding radical feminists.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But, you know, that's the thing is that when you look at what's true, it's generally simple. Mm-hmm. Truth is generally simple.
Yeah.
And so it's simple to understand that there are injustices in this world, minor and major, and it may be an injustice that you are whatever and you can't get service from whoever. That may be sort of an injustice. It's not fair, but it's not actionable, and it's within the rights of other people to be wrong about you and about anybody else or anything else. And you are not owed someone else's labor. That's where it all comes down to. No matter what good idea that you want, whether it's health care or anything else, you think doctors should have to perform services for people. But that is, like you said earlier, it's slavery. That is slavery. It's not chattel slavery, but it's a completely different kind of slavery. When you can claim ownership over another individual and their labor, that is slavery. Clear and simple. And I did find that quote, and I'd like to read it because it's really good. This is Thomas Sowell, and he's amazing. Economic policies need to be analyzed in terms of the incentives they create rather than the hopes that inspired them. And it didn't have the whole thing on it, but it says something in the end about, the ends don't justify the means, basically.
Well, so we're getting in a little bit into negative rights versus positive rights, and that, of course, positive rights don't exist. There's no such thing. You're not owed anything. You're not entitled to anything. Right. Now, negative rights is only so much as you're entitled to not be aggressed upon. The not, hence, therefore, negative rights. Right. You have when we say life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, which of course did not originally exist. It was life, liberty, and property. That is your own pursuance. That's what that means. You should not be obstructed if you are a peaceful individual that is striving for X, Y, and Z. You should not be aggressed upon to stop you. Right. But you're not owed anything.
Right. The only obligation you have is not to aggress on others.
And so if those principles were applied to the situation, this is immediately a non-factor. The business says, well, we don't owe you any service. Even if Jessica was a woman and had a vagina, I mean, they could still say, well, we don't like you, go away. And that's perfectly fine. And you know what? Right. I mean, maybe it's easy for us to say, but if you and I, when we got done with the show, went down the street here for lunch and we walked in and they said, look, we're busy and frankly, we don't want to seat you anyway. Then, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that I wouldn't be upset by that. Right. But you better believe I wouldn't be going out of my way to give them money. Like, I'd be going out of my way to talk them down in the community and give them terrible reviews and then go to one of their competitors. Yeah. That would be the best thing you could do. And that's not violent, by the way. Right. I didn't say burn their restaurant down. I didn't say shoot the clerk behind the register. Right. But I did say, but if you want to go out into the community of your own free will and say, hey, that place turned down my business. I don't like the way I was treated. This place over here treated me better. That's just the free market at work.
Real freedom necessitates unfairness. You have to allow for unfairness. And you are not, you're not entitled to fairness. That's not what you're entitled to. You're entitled to be able to make your own way in the world. And I think Eric July talked about this on my show a long time ago, is that, look, if someone doesn't want to serve Black people, I want to know who they are so that I don't give them my business. They don't get the benefit of my money. I can vote with my dollars. That's what really hurts them. And reputation in the community. So I think if the free market, if there were a free market and we're actually allowed to work, that we would see less racism than we do now, because the laws, when they come in with the proxy force and they force you to do things, that creates resentments that then people can use to hang on to and keep from knowing the other different kind of person. And so I think the free market, you would have the incentive of needing to make money, so that racism would probably be much lessened in a society like that than what we have, where it seems to be, it creates more divisions. Thank you, state.
Well, and so kind of bringing this around full circle is that, so let's say this situation were handled the way we would prefer, that this man who calls himself a woman goes into an establishment, goes into 5 establishments, goes into 50, and they say, no, we don't want to, we're not going to perform that service for you. And so let's say that by off chance he goes out of his way to find one that does, and he can't. And let's say that because people who fit his demographic are so small in number, the demand is not great enough, and that establishment doesn't exist. Even in that scenario where, there's no such thing as a market failure, as Walter Block would say, even in a scenario where there just wasn't enough demand and there was no establishment willing to offer that service, virtue signaling or otherwise, And that was just the end of the tale. It just couldn't be done. Even in that scenario, that's, for one, that's still only affecting 0.00001% of the population. And two, no matter how tragic the tale is, I mean, you can make it life or death. You can say, oh, I need a kidney to live. Of course, if the state didn't ban people from selling their organs, you probably would be able to get a kidney, no problem. Right. But that's beside the point. Let's say you need a heart to live, and obviously you can't sell that very easily. Say you need a heart to live, and you can't find one. Well, that's sad, and I'm sorry for you. But that doesn't give you the justification to aggress upon other people.
The rights of other people.
I mean, you know, think of it as a life or death situation. Let's say you need a heart transplant. There's none available. Does that mean you get to kill someone and then drag their fresh corpse into the ER? And you tell the doctors, look, take his heart out. He's not using it anymore. Well, of course not. We would say, well, obviously that's murder and that's not allowed. Well, this may not be a situation of life or death or murder, but it's still the same principle. I mean, this is why principles are so beautiful, and it's something that we say on this program all the time, is that I genuinely believe that the overwhelming majority of people don't have principles. And a quick way you can tell, that someone doesn't, is say you sit down to have a political conversation, and you say, here's 10 different issues that are just kind of in the mainstream right now. If they have to go line by line
with
and say,
each issue.
well, I think on number one this, and I think on number, well, that tells me you don't have any principles. Because if you did, you would apply those principles across the board, and it would help to guide your decision making.
It's a framework to make making decisions simple, because it comes down to the bottom lines, not the minutia of the issues, but what's the bottom line? And the bottom line is that people should be free, and those freedoms all stem from the self-ownership or individual autonomy. And if you violate that, if you don't own yourself completely, then what amount of ownership can other people have over you? You've just legitimized, by even if you say they have 1% ownership, then you've legitimized slavery, because it will always go from there.
Now, but to be clear though, that doesn't necessarily mean we always like the outcome.
Right. No.
You know, when you apply your
not
principles
entitled
to 100 different issues, there may be some issues where you find you have a bad taste in your mouth on X, Y, or Z. But nobody said having principles was necessarily easy.
Right.
Nobody said that you were always going to be 100% happy with the outcome. But it's about consistency. It's about logical consistency. It's about moral consistency. It's about understanding that, it's about understanding that your social preferences are not what's at play here. Principles and social preferences don't always line up 100%.
Right. When you're principled, you have to be able to stand on your principles even when you lose. And that's something that my friend Grant Henry would always say, is like, I don't agree with you on everything, but I always know you're going to give me a consistent answer with everything else you've said. And that's not because I'm special. That's because, libertarian principles, anarchist principles have taught me that they have to be applicable everywhere, or they're applicable nowhere. You can't pick and choose where you apply your principles. It's like abortion is a good example of that, because I am personally pro-life, and I wish there weren't abortions in the world. But I also don't want legislation from a proxy force to stop that, because it makes it worse, for one. We always know what prohibitions do, and people are going to do these things. We can't solve all the injustices of the world. And even when people say, well, you're just saying that murder's okay, that's not what I'm saying, because people get away with murder all the time now. Most murders are not solved. Like, this is the thing. Like, injustice in the world is going to happen. It's a thing. That's the state of humanity. Anarchism and libertarianism don't fix the injustice. They just lessen it, and they give us a place we can go to apply consistently the principles of real justice, so that the least amount of harm is done.
So let me ask you this then. If there was a community of like-minded individuals and they got together and decided this is our community, and in our community we don't allow abortion, is that fair? And
that
then if you go into that community,
knowing that,
and
that's
then
fair.
and then you say, I'm going to have me an abortion, because that's how it's done.
Yeah,
medically.
I think that would be fair when you go in knowingly. The problem is that when you get into this idea of a blanket federal system that covers 326 million people, and they're going to be able to do that. So in your community, you can lessen that abuse, what you see as bad. In other communities, they will allow that. That's kind of the beauty of, not that abortion is beautiful, but the beauty of an anarchist system is the people that live in a place together can decide, and they're not forced from the outside on what to do.
So you believe then that smaller individual communities can form and decide these different issues one way or the other, and that should be respected within their boundaries. So you can have one community that says, well, we don't do that here,
Right.
and you can have another community that says, well, we do that here.
If they adhere to the principles across the board, where you're
So-
not forced to stay there if you want to go outside and do something like that.
So what you're telling me is you believe in secession.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, Alan Mosley. Yes, I do. And that's the thing. There's unfairness, and freedom, like I said, it necessitates unfairness. There are things that are unfair in this world. There are things that are unjust. There are things that are just flat out wrong. We can't be responsible to solve them all. And that's what the state system really does, is it tries to apply whatever the fad solution is at the moment to everything, and then you end up causing more problems. When communities, if there were bottom-up governance, people could determine how they want to live, so that in Alabama, they can be abortion-free, and in California, they can have all the abortions they want, because guess what? In the end, you're responsible for your decisions. I don't know if there's an afterlife where you're going to be held accountable for those things, but you have to live with the consequences of your decisions in this life. And there are consequences beyond just the ending of life in abortion to a person who has one. And not enough people talk about that. They get caught up in the other. But it's not my job to stop people and save them from themselves.
So if I want to save myself by watching the Sherry Voluntary show, how do I do that?
You can go to Facebook and find the Sherry Voluntary show. You can go to YouTube, SoundCloud, Twitter. I don't post so much on Twitter, so forget Twitter. But any of the podcasting platforms, podcatchers, you'll find me there. Just type in Sherry Voluntary. I'm the only one that I know of, so.
What about postcards from Somalia?
You can go to Facebook, again, find Postcards from Somalia.
Hold on. I only asked that because I'm normally the one who does that on the show,
Right.
and so I know that now I've put you on the spot by saying, what does Alan say at the end of every
I didn't
episode?
actually think of that at all, because, I just will
What's-
say go to
what's-
Facebook and find it, or go to the
Go
little,
to Facebook and
little-
find it.
Little
No.
Productions. You
Sherry,
can go to that website.
the huddled masses can't, they can't be responsible for finding it. You have to tell them it's facebook.com/postcards from Somalia.
Yep.
You just did.
But what's the thing for Sherry Voluntary show?
You just go and type in Sherry Voluntary. I don't know anyone who goes and types in facebook.com/Sherry Voluntary. You just go to Facebook and you take the little magnifying glass and you type in Sherry Voluntary.
Just click on that internet button and
right.
type in the words.
I mean, people don't go to type in the .com or .whatever. Yeah,
I
it's
do.
always typing like
I always
this.
type in .com.
I love the kitty meme where they're typing like this. That's how I always do that. That's what I think in my head.
Do you have any other links or promotions or anything else you want to share before we go?
No, I don't think so.
That's the longest pause that has ever happened on the Gold Standard. Is just staring off into the void. There
You're
for a
welcome
moment.
for my service.
Yeah, thank you for your service. Well, thank you for
Thank
not
you.
just being on the program, but coming down to Osborne Studio and Sound in beautiful Columbia, Tennessee.
I like to come to beautiful Columbia, Tennessee occasionally.
Only a handful of guests have done that, and you are one.
I've done it 3 times.
Yeah.
And Mike Meharry is one,
Yep.
and Dave Benner is one. But
Well, I'm
Dave,
in good company.
Yeah, I mean Dave doesn't count.
A weeaboo and a, dare I say, boomer?
Oh
He's
no,
gonna
no,
kill
no,
me.
no!
He's
don't.
not really a boomer, y'all.
He's not. Please don't stir up
He's
that
gonna
kind of
pick
trouble.
at your show now.
No, please don't. You say that like anyone watches this program. It's so ridiculous. Guys, we will be back after this break.
Have you ever been talking politics with a friend and told, if you don't like it here, you should just move to Somalia?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, from the sandy beaches of Mogadishu, Sherry and I bring you Postcards from Somalia, one of the newer products of Little L Productions, where we take on all of the fallacies of the people who say, if you don't like it, you can just get out. Your ad could be playing right now, reaching thousands of potential customers. Sadly, it's not, but it could be. Find out how to be an advertised sponsor for The Gold Standard with Alan Mosley. Email us at tgsalanmosley@gmail.com.
See?
You can't just be talking when we're transitioning back into the next scene.
Yeah.
You
I
see that?
can.
You see
Yeah.
that?
I just did.
But isn't it so cool that we can see all the things?
I like
I'm
it.
pointing at the camera and waving my hand, and people at home are like, "What's he doing? What's he talking about?" He's an R word. That's what they're thinking. That's well, we don't say that.
Oh, you're giving up the R word?
We can't. We have to use
Ooh, he's
nice. We
serious.
have to use nice language. If we want to spread the program and get syndicated on in more channels, we have to say R word instead of
Okay.
I'm
Like
confused.
C word?
What's an R word?
You're an R word. That's what it is.
Like is an our word or
No,
or like
but
our,
Blake,
In
you're
the
you're
letter
Southern
R.
boy, you.
Today's episode brought to you by the letter R.
Blake is an R word. That's pretty much proven. I wanted to say something else really quick before we did our websites and wrapped up today. So we're going to be, over the next several weeks, we're changing up the studio. We're adding some new tech. The quality of the program is going to be awesome. Just all the way around, lots of changes. But there's a few other things we're really going to work on. We're going to be working on doing more fundraising and monetizing for the program because this stuff ain't free.
Tell me about it.
See, our word Blake agrees completely. And that's going to be his thing now.
R word B.
And the other thing is that, I don't know for people at home that don't realize this, but when you are a content producer and you are trying to share your content on the web and you're using things like social media to do that, especially if your message is not mainstream, would that be
I think
politically
that's
correct?
appropriate.
That's non-mainstream content.
Marginalized.
Then it becomes very difficult because there's hurdles in your path of which you have no control. And I'll give you one perfect example. I have a social media reach of somewhere in the area of 3,000 to 4,000. Last week, before our most recent episode, I had made a post earlier in the day, just a quick little reminder that, hey, a reminder that the new episodes debut Wednesday nights at 8 o'clock, 9 Eastern time. Can't wait to see you there. Of an audience of potentially 3,000 to 4,000 people, how many people do you think saw that post?
10.
6.
6. Oh, I was close.
Our post just reminding people to check out the most recent episode got a reach of 6 on a social media platform that shall not be named, but it's a book of faces.
A fascists? What?
Yeah, something like that. And so, guys, it's really difficult to grow a program organically. I mean, it really takes a concerted effort by ourselves, by our friends and our family and our well-wishers.
And our viewers.
And our viewers and fans at home and people who enjoy the program. It really takes work on you guys' part, that if you watch the show and you say, hey, I like that one thing that redheaded lady said, or, you know, that curly-haired fellow, he is sure a racist. However you may feel about it, you know.
The other R word.
Click like, click subscribe, click share, leave us a comment, whether it's good or bad. If it's bad, we'll just ban you. That's fine. I mean, we do that all the time, so it's no problem. But either way, but leave us something, because that's the only way we're going to get through the censor so that more people can see the program other than 6. So
Can I add to that?
no. This is the ending segment, and it's already in my head.
Okay.
You don't just add to the ending segment
asked.
when we're in the middle of the ending segment. Unbelievable. I don't love you anymore. We're moving that down. So there's that. So guys, thank you so much for watching another episode of The Gold Standard with Alan Mosley. You can follow us on social media, which is facebook.com/teach. Look, you can even see it. It's right there. Look, like what? It's on this side.
Isn't that amazing?
Facebook.com/TGSL. We could do a sing along. We could have like Like you could
mean
have
that
like a
little
little
dot that
wand, and
bounces
you
along?
could do the bouncy
No.
ball like across the words.
No.
Alan says don't talk during the ending segment.
You know when I had Ron Paul on the show. When I had Ron Paul on the show right before we went on.
Gratuitous Ron Paul mention.
Ow!
So when we had Ron Paul on the show, before we started, I was telling him like, hey, we're gonna do an intro, we're gonna do an outro, blah blah blah. And his answer actually was, okay, I just won't say anything. And I was like, that's not what I meant.
Right, Dr. Paul, you won't.
I wasn't trying to tell Ron Paul, you shut up. But what I was saying is that when we're doing the thing, you know, we're doing the thing. So it's facebook.com/TGS Alan Mosley. Twitter is @Alan M. Mosley. I do post on Twitter. It's mostly just angry, just vitriol, just
What else is on
rage.
Twitter?
Yeah. But you don't have to do any of that. You can just go to our website, which is thegoldstandardpodcast.com. Consider supporting us on Patreon, which is patreon.com/TGS Alan Mosley. And we will see you next week.